go live button.
Is that a Tampa Bay jersey?
Indeed.
And we're live.
Hello.
Hey, so welcome to Just Got Played's favorite expansions. So today we're going to be talking about our favorite expansions. I asked everybody to bring 3 to the table. I thought we were going to have a lot of crossover, but we only had a couple of crossover. So we're going to talk about 10 great expansions today, apparently. I've got a thumbnail here for the YouTube video. That is just a bunch of expansions that were highly rated, so that's not necessarily the ones you're going to hear about
In
today.
case you didn't know what expansions were, those are some of them.
Well, let's talk for a second about what is an expansion, all right? So, expansions are add-ons to a game, and depending on who you ask, even like little promos and stuff count as expansions. I put those sort of in a separate category. But, there's expansions, mini expansions, promos, so there's some places where you can draw the line. I could do a separate video on my favorite promos. There's actually a few promos that I feel really make games a lot better. So what does an expansion usually bring to the game? Well, usually you'll find an expansion that adds more players. That's very common. Or other modalities of play, like a co-op expansion or a solo expansion. A lot of the times you'll find things that's just more of the stuff that's in the game, maybe with a few, extra mechanisms thrown in or something. But I think in general that probably covers it. I mean, are there other sort of kinds of expansions that you find?
I think the only one you didn't mention is one that I describe as fixing the base game.
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily expand it. It says, hey, this is a great game, but there's a core issue that we need to take care of. So they'll release an expansion, Smartphone Inc. 1.1 or different things like that that'll kind of address those issues and make it more playable. So there's the Band-Aid expansion is what I would call it. And it seems like it shouldn't be that common, but there's a decent amount of games that do exactly that.
Neutral said expansions you spend extra money on. That's fun.
Yes. I think it's fair. Oh, I lost my point. Go ahead. I'll get back to it.
Well, so I'll say that for me, I did not focus on, or one of the favorite expansions I like to buy are ones that just add more players, because I typically have a higher player count than most games. But I didn't focus on that here, because that's a very, I want this list to be, here are expansions that you'll probably like. Whether or not you like an expansion that adds a 5th or 6th or 10th player really is just very specific to your game group, like
actually you brought me back to my point. Thank you, Stephen. My point was going to be, I think it's generally fair to assume that expansions are going to make the game more complicated. I think the only ones that don't are the ones that you're talking about, are the ones that simply add more players or
That's
give
not
you
necessarily
a
true.
solo.
Because like Terraforming Mars, Prelude makes the game shorter, makes it easier.
But I would argue that it does make it more complicated, because you have to make decisions right up front, as opposed to letting the game develop.
You're taking
and
like
see how
5 decisions from the beginning of the game, and you're only having to make one. So it narrows that.
It's also complicated because sometimes to add more players, you have to change the game a little. I really like Alhambra Vizier's Favor because it adds too many expansions that help you play with more players.
I agree, but I think what something we're not really touching on is the content-driven games that add more content, more plot.
Right, more scenarios.
Because mine are based on that.
Yeah,
Season 2.
That's in that category of just more stuff to me, right? It's what you like about the game. It's just more and fresh.
Well, so what Patrick's saying though is it's not more stuff. It's just more factions. It's dice thrown, and here's another 4 heroes. It's
or more scenarios for a game that you like that's scenario based.
I was thinking more scenarios.
Yeah. It's not. I think there's a fine line, but I see what Patrick's saying. It's like it's not just here's more stuff to toss in the box and you can add it or not. It's here's more content to enjoy with this game as opposed to new mechanics to enjoy.
Yeah, I don't think we have any living card games on the list. Neutral mentioned those.
That's interesting.
2 of mine are just strictly more content.
Spoiler.
I think all of mine fall in the same category as expands the game itself. And I touch a bit on fixes the game as well. But I didn't really consider more players. And honestly, I didn't really think of expansions per se that added more content, more modules and things like that. I just didn't think of it.
I thought this would be really easy. I'll just pick 2 or 3 and be ready for this list. And then I pulled up my list and I came up with 11. I was like, here's 11 expansions that I really like, other than just adding players. And so then I had to narrow it down, obviously. And so the way that I narrowed it down is I picked one expansion that I will not play this game without this expansion. And I picked 2 games where, yeah, all right, I'll play the base game without the expansion, but I would vastly prefer to have the expansion included.
See, I had a
feel like
totally
all of
different
these-
experience.
All of this
Totally.
conversation is probably nested within our choices, so we should probably just get started.
A
Well,
bit.
You
I'm
know,
calling it now. One of Patrick's choices starts with an M. Calling it now.
Mine absolutely. I went completely the other way. I had 3 right off the bat. I was like, oh, it's this one, it's this one, it's this one. That's probably why I didn't think of anything with like more stuff.
Well, Erock,
like
why don't
Patrick
you
was
start by
saying.
telling us one of those games?
well, now, hold on.
I would love to.
We're gonna start. I made a slideshow, so we got to go in the order I put them in. So John is actually gonna start us off with your first pick, John, which is Tuscany for Viticulture.
Yeah, so my wife yelled at me when I told her this one because some of what I was thinking of is actually in the Viticulture Essential Edition. I love Stonemaier games. I love the cool, crazy stuff they come up with. One thing they don't really care about is balance. They usually sell it to you and then they go, we'll balance it afterwards. Viticulture is one of the most expanded upon games. I could not tell you another game that's had more expansions than Viticulture, and that's everything from those little small, here's an extra deck of cards, to here's a new board, to here's a this and that.
The Grandes weren't in the original edition.
The Grande meeples are like one of the best parts. The new Wake Up Order in the Essential Edition, really good. That changed how wine is made. Like, so Viticulture base game is a very cool game that is flawed in so many ways. And they've released one expansion for every flaw in the base game and made it better. It's to the point where I will not play base Viticulture. I just won't do it. But if you've got Tuscany and then you've got Essential Edition and where all that stuff's in there, I'm in, because I really, like I said, I really enjoy Stonemaier games, but you have to be playing the most up-to-date / balanced version of it, or you're going to have a situation that happens and you're like, oh, I guess that person wins by 115 points. Good game.
Well, I mentioned that there were a couple of crossovers. This is right off the bat is a crossover, right? So I had Viticulture, Tuscany, Essential Edition, I guess, whatever is what you call it now, on my list. It is one of those games where I will play Viticulture, but I vastly prefer to play with the Tuscany board with the 4 seasons, with that area control thing going on, which, to be honest, I thought was going to be stupid, the area control thing in a winemaking game, but I like it. And
it's
the
just
wake
more
up
free
track.
stuff. How do you not like it?
It's
Every
free
time
real
you go
estate.
there, you get more free stuff.
Yeah, and
So-
it's also sort of strange because the only version of Viticulture I have is the collector's edition, so it wasn't clear to me what was in what, because it's all just one big box of stuff to me, right? But structures I think is in Tuscany as well, along with special workers and some other stuff.
I
But
think they changed how some of the structures worked that they were in the base game. It's a lot of, so like I said,
Wait,
some
do
expansions.
you have the collector's edition of the first edition?
I have the collector's edition that included
No, he has
Viticulture
the one
and Tuscany
yeah.
in the like a wine crate.
because I have the
box.
collector's edition of the
Oh,
original Kickstarter,
interesting.
and it doesn't have any of that stuff.
We
See-
have the wine crate with all that stuff, but we
I
got it all
guarantee-
piecemeal. We got
Yeah,
like
well, the wine
you
crate was not a good. The thing that I have looks like a wine crate, but it's not the wine crate that they sell. It's just
Every
so
friend
much
you
for
know that
Viticulture.
owns, if you have several friends that own Viticulture, none of them have the same version of Viticulture. you could play 20 different versions of that. So that's one of the games that fits in it doesn't expand the game, it fixes the game.
There's
It
a
makes
bit
it
of
little more
expansion
complicated
there.
as well.
Makes it a little more what, Patrick?
Complicated as well.
It does,
Agreed.
for sure. I mean, the Hefe meeples alone add another layer to it.
Well,
but it's
4 seasons versus 2 is a big difference.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's,
adds a lot
that's
of
probably my
complexity.
favorite part of all of it is changing it to 4 seasons.
Yep. All right, cool. So let's move on to another expansion, which I'm a little surprised wasn't a crossover. So Patrick, why don't you tell us about Battlestar Galactica Pegasus expansion?
It is not a fix a problem. It is just giving you more stuff. And it does it blurs the line whether it gives you more content. It does give you more risk cards and does give you more player character choices and that kind of thing. But it doesn't like advance a plot. It just gives you more options, and it kind of builds on the replayability, which I think is very cool for any game to do if you're going to do an expansion, because they're banking on the fact, or I hope that they're banking on the fact that you've played this game enough and you like it enough to where you may be getting a little bit tired, and that's what I'm looking for basically in an expansion. Something that's going to make it a little more replayable, add some more variables and more player powers and character abilities.
Is this the first expansion?
That's it is. It's the only expansion I played. I haven't played the Dawn one, so I can't comment on that one. But
there's a third one too.
Pardon?
There's a third one too.
Yeah. I do remember playing BSG enough to where I was like, "Oh, I really wish there was something." And then I went
just a little more variety. Yeah.
Yeah, and it changed it.
Yeah.
It was
now, Patrick, you talk about adding complexity. I literally didn't pick Battlestar Galactica because I always talk about Battlestar Galactica. It would have been on my list, but I never shut up about the game. So it adds one of my favorite things in an expansion ever. It gives you a new ship that you can go to and stuff. It gives you the ability to take a player and throw them in the airlock and launch them into space.
Yeah,
that's not in the base game?
That's not in the base game.
Oh.
There is no greater expansion element than an airlock.
Yeah, there's a brig, but there's not an airlock.
Yeah. So that alone is my favorite, but it has a lot of cool stuff to it. Like, you got humans who are Cylon sympathizers, you got new ways to set up, but the complexity of it, like Patrick said, you have to have played Battlestar like 10 times and know what you're doing, and that's why I never get to play the expansions, because there's always at least one person that goes, I've heard a lot about this, but I've never played it, and you go, okay, let's use the base game. But those expansions are really cool and really in-depth as to what they add to the game.
I've never played any of these.
I have base, and then I have the 2 expansions that aren't done.
Isn't it called Daybreak?
Daybreak. So Daybreak is 3. Pegasus, I think, is 1. I can't remember the second off the top of my head.
I've played the base game. I've never played any of the expansions for this.
They're really
BSG
good, but they're
Party.
really complex. Yeah.
BSG Party, put it on the list.
You're going to do 5 players, because that's the best count, and I'm not taking any further questions.
What's the best count?
5.
5. All right. We'll have to work that out.
Yeah. What's your count?
I'm sure we can find a 5th player.
Yeah.
I don't think I played it with more than 5. I think I played it at 5, and I think I played it at... Oh, wait. No, the first time I played it was at 6. Yeah, 5 and 6.
Even number counts usually get a little wonky. 7 is too much for how long the game is. 5 is that sweet spot of 2 traders, 3 humans, see who survives.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on, finally, to Erock's first pick, which is an expansion for a game I have yet to play, but I would like to play, and that is an expansion for Xayah called Embers of a Forsaken Star.
Wait, who picked that? I picked that?
You did.
No, I'm kidding. I love this. This was absolutely, easily the first game I thought of. I love Xayah. When I got Xayah, I played it. I was like, this game is fantastic. I thought this is a near perfect game. I love the open sandbox. I love the space. I love the choices. I can be a pirate. I can be a good guy. I can deliver stuff if I want to. I can do whatever I want to do. I love this game. I called it near perfect. And then the expansion came out and made it better. This is one of those that almost falls in the fixes it category, but I don't think the game was broken. It just had a few little issues. And this expansion fixed every little issue in this game and gave you a ton more stuff to do and expanded the story. And it's just so awesome. First of all, anyone who's played the base game, and only the base game, may know that there's a slight issue with the economy, where it's entirely possible that a planet that makes something and a planet that buys something are right by each other, and somebody who wants to do that can just keep going back and forth and doing that. This fixes that.
Don't you, Erock?
Well, not anymore. This fixes
they fixed it. Yeah.
They fixed it, exactly. And then, of course, there's the other problem, which is the planet that produces is out there, but nobody's ever found the planet that actually takes the stuff. So that's kind of like a dead economy at that point. The economy was fixed entirely in this, because there's now an economy board which controls what comes in and what goes out. So you can't just have somebody flooding Big Macs all day long. Somebody's going to want you have to have somebody to take those Big Macs and turn them into, I don't know, cars. I love my analogy.
That's a great analogy.
It's
Yes. And
the future
this
is bright.
fixes that. The future is bright. We turn Big Macs into cars. I can't wait to see it. Also, a whole lot of other little things. This is one of those, like, if you played Zaya a lot, there were a couple of little things, like the economy's kind of a little thing. The ships were maybe a little bit too shield powerful. This fixes that. They were maybe a little bit too brittle at the same time. This fixes that. It kind of makes your initial ship that you get obsolete very quickly. This fixes that. Like, every little thing that you'd walk away from Zaya going, yeah, that's a great game. I just wish they'd, that they fixed all of it. This game is almost perfect, which is really funny because that's what I called it before the expansion. And now it's even almost perfecter. I absolutely love it. It's number one on my list. It always will be.
They're gonna put that quote on the box of the next edition. Almost perfecter.
Almost perfecter.
It's an asymptote. Every expansion makes it better, but never perfect.
Eric, I have not played this game, and I'm upset with you that you've never made me play it. So.
Oh, well, we're going to have to add it to our list then.
Just keep in mind, Patrick, you can't just go back and forth between planets. They fixed that. So don't go in with that strategy.
Got it. What's the playtime on that?
It's one of those where it's really up to you.
It's Eric, so 7 hours.
Like, there's a fame board, and fame is victory points. And you basically decide as a group how many points you want to play to. So it's really whatever your window is.
A lot of these sandbox games work like that, yeah.
Which is really cool. I mean, me and Babe like to go, let's play to 50, which is ridiculous. That's so many. That's ridiculous, But you could have a good game with like 10. Hour and a half maybe for 10 points. Because it's one of those things, like everything you do gives you a point. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do this to A, you get a point. You do this A, you get a point. You know what I mean? So 50, it takes a long time to get 50, but you can rack up 8-10 points in, probably about an hour. I mean, you can play a lot of people in it too. So, and everything, everybody does weird stuff. You know why I love this game? Because everything is dangerous, and that makes it fun. And it doesn't have to be dangerous. You can always take the safe route for everything, but even that's not always going to protect you because the pirate might come and shoot at you anyway, kind of a thing. But, like just as a for instance, you can absolutely go 12 spaces out of your way in a roll and move game to go through the hatch to get into a planet. Or, you feeling lucky, go right through the shields. You have a 50-50 chance of just dying. That's it. And if you don't die, you did it.
Kevin would hate this game.
And like every part of this game is kind of like that. Like, yeah, there's safe ways to do a lot of things, but a lot of things are just dangerous. And that's just the way the game goes. And you roll dice. And you know what? You didn't roll well enough. You blew up. Way it goes. Start over on the next turn with another ship. It's awesome.
All right. Well, that's I'm going to move on to an expansion that is a much smaller expansion than what you're talking about, because that sounds like an elaborate box full of a lot of stuff. So for me, my number one expansion is the one that I don't want to play without. If you come up to me and say, hey, do you want to play Terraforming Mars? I'll be like, sure. Oh, wait a minute. Do you have Prelude? And if they say no, I'll be like, I'm out. So to me, Terraforming Mars is a fun game. I like to play it. It's just such a slog getting started. It is so slow, and consequently the game is too long. Now, I know if Tiffany can hear me, somewhere she's yelling because she never wants the game to end. But for me, it's just too long, right? And there's no reason for it. I don't, getting those Prelude cards, and I think you get 4 and you get to choose 2. You get to keep 2, right? And they just give you some kind of asymmetric power. They give you some kind of boost, some kind of start somewhere. I mean, it shaves a ton of time off the game. I mean, I can't think of another expansion that has come out like this, where it's like, here's the full experience of the game, but we shaved a bunch of time off with the expansion.
The only problem with this pick is that Ares completely invalidates it.
Well, no,
It's like why play Prelude? We can just play Ares, in my opinion.
no, I mean they
They're
are
different
different games,
Yeah,
right?
They stand
I
on their
just-
own legs.
And-
I
but-
love Terraforming Mars, but I just play Prelude at this point. I'm too old.
But if you come up to me and you say, "Hey, do you want to play Viticulture?" I'll be like, "Okay, but do you have Tuscany?" That's great. I would rather play Tuscany, but I'll play Viticulture. If you come up to me and say, "Hey, you want to play Terraforming Mars?" I'll be like, "Do you have Prelude?" And I won't play it. I'll just be like, "Nope."
Well, what if they said, yes, we do, but we also play with colonies and Venus? I don't know, all the other stuff.
Nope. This isn't the games that have way too many expansions list, Erock. This is the good expansions list.
If I see the big box, I'm just leaving. I don't got time for that either.
Yeah, I think we learned our lesson with big boxes at the last Ice Tower convention, John. Spoiler alert: you won't be seeing any Dune on this list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Prelude. It's just a few. Right? I mean, there's a few project cards and maybe some corporations came with it, and then a bunch of Prelude cards. I mean, there's hardly anything in that box, right? And there's really no additional rules to learn from it. Just the initial starting choose your Prelude cards, right? So there's not.
I feel like you get 4. Am I crazy?
You get 4 and you discard 2.
Yeah, 4 and keep 2.
Yeah, get 4, keep 2.
Yeah, it's one of those expansions that it just becomes the game. You never play without it. There's no reason to play without it. It's just this is now part of the game.
I wouldn't teach without it. I wouldn't play without it. It's so simple and just an improvement in every way, in my opinion. And that is why it's number 1 on my list. Because I was looking down my list and I was like, well, that's a good expansion, but I'd play the base game. But this is the only one where I was like, nope, I'm not playing without this.
Eric really liked it because he got dealt 4 and kept all 4.
Yeah. Well, that does sound like something you and Tiffany would do. You'd be like, yeah, and let's make sure that all the parameters have to be doubled up instead of singular, and the game's going to last a week. And yeah.
Plus, I think it's really cool because it meshes with all those beginning decisions that you make anyway. Because you're already deciding what corporation I want, what cards am I going to keep, and this really just meshes in there. It kind of gives you a bigger, better picture. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but in those instances, I feel like it gives you a more open variety of choices that you're presented with. When sometimes
direction.
Yeah, but sometimes it just meshes perfectly. And I've been in a game where somebody's gotten like the perfect combo of all this stuff, and they were unbeatable.
Oh yeah,
it happens.
I mean, I like expansions that give you sort of a direction. I mean, I like games that do that too, because sometimes you have players and they just don't know what to do. And so it's nice if the game sort of pushes them in a direction. But then at the same time, sometimes you want to play and you don't want those restrictions. I
want to go the other way.
I want to go whatever I want to do.
The first couple times I play a game, give me a direction. But after that, set me free. Let me discover and do my own thing at that point.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that is the number 1 from all of us. So let's move on to our number 2s. And I am going to I'm going to go deuces. I'm going to go with Patrick. We'll start with him. And I think this is what you were alluding to earlier when we were talking. This is the Mansions of Madness Streets of Arkham expansion.
Called it.
Yep, you called it. I love Mansions of Madness. It's an easy game to set up. It's an easy game to teach. It teaches itself with the app. It's absolutely outstanding. I'm starting to get more and more fond of that kind of stuff because I feel like that's probably my weak suit when it comes to gaming is my ability to teach it. And this one gives you even more content, and it actually feels a little different. Before you were literally confined to the houses themselves, and this almost kind of gives you a feeling that you're kind of moving around Arkham instead. So it adds a little bit more to the theme of the game almost. Plus, it gives you more characters, more monsters, and there's a bunch of these expansions that are out. But this, I could only choose one. But this is the one that I kind of feel like actually kind of starts to change the game a little. There's 1 or 2 additional rules, which I can't recall off the top of my head. They're small, little teeny changes, but they don't make it more complex. So it's just adding more content, adding more scenarios.
It's fantastic. All of these expansions for this is a great game. We got Lord of the Rings version of this system going on. We have not unboxed it yet, but it's like very high on my list.
I didn't even know they had that.
Oh, you like Lord of the Rings?
Oh, just a tiny little bit, yeah. Yes, it's
Journeys in Middle Earth.
Yep, that's it. Journeys in Middle Earth. That's Mansions of Madness. It's just in Lord of the Rings, like it's the building, it's the framework. They just put a different building on it.
I only played it once, but it's just as good in my opinion. It really holds up.
Awesome.
Nice.
But good choice. Mansions of Madness is awesome. All those expansions are fantastic. It just adds to the monsters and stuff that's out there and so much more to do. I agree with you. The app's fantastic. There's nothing like decoding something on that. Like, it's so cool and interactive, you know? Good choice.
Yep. Thank you.
So, speaking of choices that Erock approves of, let's have Erock's choice, number 2. And in typical Erock fashion, he's going to cheat. And so this is Champions of Midgard, the Jarl box, which includes 2 expansions, because it includes the Dark Mountains, which I don't really remember what that includes other than more players, and then probably the one that is the most impact on gameplay, Valhalla.
Indeed. So this is another one of those games that I absolutely loved before expansions. This game is so fun. This is kind of, I always thought of this as like an upgrade to your, what's the D&D one?
Lords of Waterdeep?
Lords of Waterdeep, yes. Like, it's the same basic concept where you're sending people out to do things and then they come back to you. Except in this game,
sometimes
they actually do come back to you, or they die and they don't. In that other game, they're really just cubes. I'm sending 6 fighters and 3 warriors out and I get 2 wizards back. I don't understand the math here. But this is actually, you're building up a little army of dice, which represent different things, spearmen and swordsmen and things. And then you're sending them out to fight against like draugrs and sea serpents and all this cool stuff out there. And you roll dice to see what happens. And if they win, you win. But they could also die. And not like all of them. I could send 5 guys into a fight and 3 of them die. But I still win. But those 3 guys, they're dead. They're not coming home. This game's fantastic. It's all rooted in a very typical worker placement game where you go and get your resources and you go and get your dice that are your guys and stuff like that. And then you just send them all out to do stuff, which is really cool. And yes, I absolutely cheated, because when I got these expansions, they came together for me. So I've never actually played without one of them. Like, I had to actually, before we filmed, look up to see what the difference was between the 2 of them. Because I know there are 2 expansions in there, but to us, it was just the expansion. And honestly, we've never played the base game since, much like Saya. Like, once I've gotten the expansion, that's it. There's no reason to play the base game. You play with all this stuff. It just makes it more fun. There's more stuff to do. The mountains bit gives you a whole other area to go and fight stuff. It really beefs up a lot of the other encounters in the game as well. That's really cool. It introduces the archers, which are super cool and really good at getting the food that you need. So all of that is an upgrade. And then probably the one that's most memorable and in your mind, if you think about it, is Valhalla, which is fantastic. Because now, when you send your guys out and they get killed, they go to Valhalla. And now you can use them again to do other things because they're in Valhalla. It's fantastic. It just completes this game in such a perfect way. Now, like I said, this is another one of this game's almost perfect. And then they came out with this and I'm like, wow, that's almost perfect.
Even more perfecter.
Yeah, there you go.
I think Valhalla is the best mechanical and theme expanding expansion of all time. With them dying in battle and going to Valhalla alone, just that aspect makes the story of the game so much cooler. And the problem with the game, if you are unlucky, is that all your guys die and there's nothing you can do about it. They're just gone. Now, if you suffer heavy losses due to RNG, well, now you can use those guys to do other stuff. So,
absolutely,
it fixes an issue that I had with the game and expands on the lore of the game. Like, it just works in so many ways. It absolutely is a must-have, in my opinion. It's a great pick.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, I also got the Jarl box. I don't remember. I might have just gotten it because it expanded the player count with the Dark Mountains, but I was pleasantly surprised by Valhalla. Also, pro tip, if you throw out the insert, you can actually fit everything in the base game box, which is...
I have that anymore.
I took everything from the base game and some mini promos I have and both expansions. I put it all in the base game box and gave away my Jarl box. So
Yeah.
Anyway, and you can still buy the Jarl box, by the way, with both expansions in it from Grey Fox. I think I
I
saw it in
would
their
never
store.
have done that, and now I'm jealous because of the space on my shelf.
Exactly. Shelf space is. I've been to your place. I have a lot less shelf space than you do.
You probably have more open.
Yeah, probably.
Awesome. So anyway, Champions of Midgard.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on to the next. That's me. All right, number 2. So this is again a game where sure I'll play the base game, but I would always rather include this expansion because it feels like it should have been part of the base game. And I think John disagrees with me here, but I don't mind teaching with this expansion either. I think it just flows naturally, and that is role player, monsters, and minions. Right? So role player is a dice drafting game, I guess, where you take these dice and you put them on your player sheet to build your character. So you're rolling up a character, right? So it's a role player. And that is a fun exercise in and of itself, right? You're getting skills, abilities, equipment. You're trying to match these patterns. You're getting these dice, trying to get your strength up, your constitution up, or at least in a certain range to score points or whatever, So you've got this whole backstory card and everything, and so it's pretty neat. But you don't do anything with your character. They did make that role player adventures game where you can go play with your character on an adventure. I've never done that, but that's an interesting side note. But at least if you had monsters and minions, then when it's time to go to the market and buy something, which is an integral part of the base game, now you can go and fight one of these minions, and you get rewards for beating the minions, and you also get knowledge about the big baddie that you're going to fight at the end of the game, right? When everybody's done rolling up their character, everybody takes a one-shot fight against this big baddie and gets a chance to get a bunch of extra victory points. So it doesn't really make it too unnecessarily complex. It does change the game a little bit in that the base game, it's very cutthroat over the positioning for initiative and getting stuff from the market. Whereas once you throw in monsters and minions, since people can go hunt minions, it's not quite as cutthroat. Although sometimes I guess there is a minion you want to kill and somebody will get ahead of you in an initiative order and go kill it before you can. So I don't know. It feels like the market isn't as tight as it used to be when playing with just the base game. So if that's what you really like about this game, maybe this expansion isn't for you. But for me, it just feels like it should have been part of the base game, and that I could teach it. Nobody would even notice that it's an expansion. And this is the other game. This is the other expansion that was a crossover. So I'm stealing Erock's thunder for his third pick.
This was my number 3. I agree with everything that you've said. I think it's fantastic. I think you're right. It makes it a little less tight, but I think it gives you more interesting choices to make, which to me is better. Tight is great. That's a mark of a great game. But I would rather have 4 things that I want than just worry about it being so tight. And I think it did this in 2 distinct ways. And the first way is by adding the minions, which gives you another option to do at that point in time. And the other way it did that was by adding the boost dice. So now you have dice that go from 3 to 8. That makes taking low numbers a lot more palatable now. So it's not a knife fight for the high numbers every time. Now it's okay. It's okay. If I take a 2 this time, that's probably okay because I might get a 7 or an 8, and that's going to balance that out at some point. So that also adds into the decision making. But at the same time, like I said, now I'm given more options. Do I want to go for it right now, or do I want to go for this other thing and take a chance on this 2 die, knowing I'm probably going to get a chance to even that out later? The game itself is more flexible with this, but with more and interesting options available to you. Plus, I agree 100%. This is one of those things, the first time when I heard of Role Player, they're like, it's a game about creating a character. And I thought, well, that's dumb.
I thought that sounded awesome.
I mean,
quite frankly, I love the character creator, right? I will spend an hour and a half to create a character to play a game. That's my jam. But I didn't think anybody else in the world was going to care about it. I was like, well, that sounds dumb. I'm going to love this game and nobody's going to want to play with me. But that was super cool. It was really fun. It was a little puzzle. It's for those of you who've never played this but have played Sagrada, it's very similar. You're given these like ways that you're supposed to put the dice out to do things.
I
in a
disagree
certain
with
way.
that comparison. I know where you're going with that, but I think they don't play at all like each. Yeah,
They don't play the
you are
same,
putting
I
dice
agree.
in patterns, but it's
The
not.
puzzle is
Yeah.
kind of the same in the base game as Sagrada as to how you want to work the dice on your little board. You're right, they play completely differently, but this changes everything because it changes it from I'm just making a character to I'm doing stuff with the character I'm making. You know you're gearing up for a big boss fight at the end, and you have these minions, these like because big bad things, they don't just come by themselves. They bring a whole horde of little bad things with them. So you get to go out and fight those. And when you do, you get little secrets on how to beat the bad guy at the end. It's all enticing. It almost makes it like it's so hard to choose. I really need to know how to get the bonus at the end of the game, but I really want that equipment. And there's a 6 blue over there, and I need that too. It is so hard. It's awesome. This is another one of those. I wouldn't play base game of this anymore. This adds way too much.
What I really want to hear is, does Patrick think it makes the game more perfecter?
I have not played the expansion. I have played role player, and I think it's awfully snooty of both of you to say that Erock was wrong in describing it that way. If they have no idea how to play role player, that's not a bad way to kind of say it's similar to Sagrada. I mean,
the puzzle is the same. The
If
game
you're
is
You're
completely
drafting
different.
dice, and that's where the similarities end. That's literally it.
Well, no, I think it's very much about you want this color in this spot. You don't want these numbers next to each. You want the numbers in specific places. You want the
you
colors
just
in
want high
specific
numbers
places.
in your good ones, and you dump all your low ones in your dump stat. And
I mean, there's something to be said for there's some games that are just sort of descriptive of their genre, right? We talk about deck builders, but you could say it's like Dominion. And people are like, oh, okay, I get that.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because
Right.
it's popular. People have played it, so now they understand what you're talking about. They may not even actually understand when you say deck builder. They make it confused thinking it's like Magic or something where it's deck construction or whatever, So saying it, like, well, it's like Sagrada. I mean, there's some value in that, but...
Even if you think I'm wrong.
I don't think
think
you're
the
wrong,
comparison...
I know you're wrong.
I hear that comparison a lot, and I don't think the comparison is strong as people make it out to be.
But apparently I'm snooty.
But
I'll take it. What?
snooty.
I'll take
Snooty.
it because
Snooty.
I am right.
Snotty.
Snotty!
You can be snooty and right.
That's true, and I'll take that. I'll take that burden.
Being
being correct,
being
but snooty
snooty
at the
and
same
wrong is
time.
much worse.
So, Stephen, interestingly, I disagree with you and Erock 100% on this inclusion, and it's also fourth on my list. Because everything you're saying is accurate, and I love the expansion, and I love everything about it, but every time I've tried to play it, it gives people so much freaking AP that the game doubles in length. And people are just sitting there. You can smell the smoke coming off of them. Their gears are turning. It's crazy how much AP inducing this expansion is. So I love it. And if you get 4 people to sit down and play it that aren't going to sit there and overthink every single decision, it's amazing. But I've yet to find myself in that circumstance.
This is how bad my group is.
Yeah.
This plays no longer than anything else.
Yeah, if you promise me this is over in an hour and a half, it'd be one of my favorite games of all time. I've never gotten it under 2.5 hours, and it definitely overstays its
Everything's
welcome at that
AP
length.
to my group. So
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons I love this, because I can actually think instead of just sitting there numb for 30 minutes waiting for my turn. There are actual choices that are weighing on me.
Well, make
between my
one. Just make
turns.
one and live with it. I'm snooty again.
I've played lots of games with Erock and Tiffany, and I don't see that being an issue with the two of you.
No, it's their group.
It's the group.
The
So
other people.
It's
that
everyone
play.
else you play with.
I don't mean Tiffany. I mean the group that
Or
we play
you.
with.
Well, it seems like the group has the problem, and then when they do, it makes Erock have the problem as well, because he's like,
Okay.
if they're going to sit there and take all the time, I might as well too.
Well, there's
Okay.
like a diminishing returns kind of a thing. Like, I need time to think just like everybody else does. But if it's too much time, I lost it. Now I
Yeah.
got to start over again.
I have sort of a mental clock where I'm just like, I'm thinking about what I'm doing, and normally I'm just ready to go by the time it's my turn because I'm paying attention right during other people's turn. But I have a mental clock where I just go, I'm taking too long, so I'm just going to do the thing that I've come up with that's the best or I'm just going to try this. I haven't gone through all the machinations to see if it's right. I'm just going to do it because it's just a freaking game, right? I don't, in the end, I don't really care if I win or lose. I'm just here for an experience. So, and I do understand that winning and doing your best is part of the experience for people. But for me, I just have forced myself to have this mental clock. Like, all right, my turn's over, right? Do something and go on.
At some point, you just burn yourself and you're not having fun anymore. You're just overcomplicating things.
Well, I mean, some people, they don't have fun unless they have made the optimal move. And those
are
the
a
people
lot of people in my group like that. They are upset with themselves if they didn't do the exact right thing at every point in time.
Can't stand it. It's a game. Let's play it. Make a decision. Move on.
I'll do something, and then it'll be the next person's turn. I'll be like, oh, I should have done that, and then I'm over it. But some people, it's like, that's going to keep them up that night.
Exactly.
So, I get it. That's fine. By the way, Neutral put his favorite picks for expansions.
I do love my group. Just saying. I love you guys.
Don't take me out, please. I'm sorry.
I don't mean you. I mean, you know who I mean.
Yeah. Neutral put his favorite picks for expansions in the chat. We'll talk about those at the end of the video. So if anybody else wants to throw some out there, we'll talk about those too. All right, so let's see where we were on number 2, and next up is John.
Let's just read this stuff.
Oh, next up is John. I know you are a giant fan of Colt Express, so why don't you tell us about Colt Express, Marshal, and Prisoners?
Sure. So Colt Express, super fun game. If you've never played it, you're all bandits on a 3D train, running car to car, trying to loot as much as you can, slapping each other as hard as you can. And sometimes you got to pull the gun out if somebody gets in your way. It's an amazing game. I love it. It's silly fun. Then they added marshals and prisoners to it, and somebody can play as the actual sheriff trying to arrest all the bandits. So they're all still running around slapping each other, but you're coming out and trying to put people under arrest. And I just love the theme of that. The feel of it is like you're the sole lawman on this train trying to stop all this chaos going on. But the best part is, whenever you walk in the car, they start punching you. You're like, you're not off limits. They don't care that you've got a gun. They've got a gun too. So there's a cool element of where you can get punched 3 times, and people get rewarded for punching you faster than the other people. You can arrest people, put them in jail. You can break other robbers out of jail, and when you do, they've got to pay you a piece of their loot for the opportunity. There's just so much cool lore and gameplay that adds to the story, as well as the mechanics. Like, I literally have a card I can move and arrest you in the same turn, and somebody has this big machination of what they're going to do, and I just run in from out of nowhere. I put them under arrest. They're back in the jail car. It's just such a cool, fun addition to an already great game. And I would have picked something over this if it counted as expansion, because Colt Super Express is this fun 2.5-hour zany game in 15 minutes with a total of like 15 cards. It is crazy that they've distilled this amazing game down to a single card game that can fit in your pocket. So Colt Express, just across the board, is one of my favorite games of all time. And Marshals and Prisoners gives you the ability to go in and arrest everybody making a ruckus, and I absolutely love it.
I played quite a bit of Colt Express. I've never heard of either of those expansions.
There's also the Stagecoach one that adds a stagecoach and horses.
That I've heard of.
Yeah, that one's fun. But Marshal
if you haven't played it with
fun.
the Marshals, you have to. It's super fun. I play the Marshal every single time. I've never won, and I don't care because I still had fun.
That's my favorite kind of thing. You're like, I don't care if I win. I'm just having fun.
You get like 6. You get 1 card per round, and you have to complete like 3 of the 5 objectives. But you only get to see them when the round comes up. So you can't plan ahead. You just gotta kind of try to do what you think is right. And half of the objectives is arresting a certain person. So you might be trying to go and throw Doc in a jail, and that's one of your goals. And if you get him in jail, you counts towards it. If not, well, you arrested 3 of his friends anyway. So still had a good time.
John says he doesn't care if he wins or not, but that's just because he wins a lot.
Right? People who win don't care. Like, I don't care.
My wife hates it because if I ever tell you there's no way I'm winning this game, I've already won the game.
John is a shark at Ticket to Ride. You should go to the World Board Gaming Championship and play Ticket to Ride, John.
The one you're talking about, Ticket to Ride, Team Ticket to Ride Asia, yeah. I am 12-0 at Ticket to Ride Asia.
Yeah, that is a fun game. We sit down to play it, and it's just like, well, who's on John's team? All right, well, you're winning. The rest of us are just going to have fun. By the way, if you've never played Team Ticket to Ride, it's hilarious and awesome. But you need the, I think it's Pack 1, the Asia map.
Yeah, you need the Asia map.
Yeah. Okay.
Never played Team.
Not on my list, but
you need
it
to
is
play
an
team.
excellent.
It's super
one.
fun.
It's an excellent expansion.
So the concept of it is you have a teammate, but you're not allowed to talk to each other.
And you share
You're
cards.
not allowed to share. You can take a turn to share your tickets with them to say, hey, this is where I'm heading. You're not allowed to converse, and you're getting colors together. So like I put a pink one up here, and you grab it and use it. I'm like, I was saving that for later, but you can't say anything to each other.
Well, you're not supposed to.
You can't say anything strategic to each other. You can curse each other out all day
Oh, that's
long.
true. Yeah, I was last time we played. John's wife was my partner, and I put a card up, and she did something with it, and I just stared daggers at her, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, "You know what you did."
Wait, is this a full box expansion?
It's a map, right? It's the
Asia
Asia
map,
map, but it has
and there's
rules
variant
and stuff
to play
there
teams in it.
Yeah, six player, 3 teams of 2. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's in the Dice Tower library,
Noted.
so that's. I'm currently on the hunt for getting this expansion if I can find it cheap.
It might be in the BGG library, where we'll be going in November.
I actually did put an offer in the BGG virtual flea market on a copy of this, so we'll see if I end up with it or not. That's not that big. I can tote that back from Dallas, no problem. All right, well that is our number 2s. So
and one of our number 3s.
Well,
Well,
no, because Viticulture was my number 3, and Role Player was your number 3. So you and I both are out of our number 3s, which is why I have a space reserved here at the beginning of the number 3s for Erock to just talk about something that's not on his list anyway, because he's going to do it anyway. So just let him do it now.
I sure was. That is hilarious, because I do have an honorable mention here. It was really hard for me to keep it off of my list. I talk a lot of shade about.
You don't
oh
say.
my God, what's the D&D one?
Lords of Waterdeep.
I talk a lot of shade about Lords of Waterdeep, but Scoundrels of Skullport is fantastic. I absolutely love it. This turns what to me is kind of a bland experience into something exciting. It gives me a bit of press my own luck, take some chances. It throws that element into this game for me that is absolutely fantastic, and it keeps the game alive. So it keeps me, who plays a million board games and is very particular in their tastes, involved and happy to play kind of a beginner game with beginners, because you don't have to do any of that at all. What it adds is this element of corruption, and it adds new spaces and things like that, and ways to gain corruption, which may or may not be very bad at the end of the game. Basically, an action will give you a lot more stuff. So instead of going somewhere and getting 2 orange warriors, I can go to space and get corruption and get 4 of them. So it's really going to speed me up here. But I get that corruption. And there are ways in the game to mitigate that, to lose the corruption, as it were, which is kind of a way to play the game. Is you go out and you get all this corruption, and then you kind of try to figure out how to get rid of it all. Because what happens at the end of the game is you don't know how much each corruption is going to cost you in points until the end of the game, because it's all based on how many total corruption have been taken.
Makes sense.
That's just an excellent addition and idea to add to this game, because you don't know the risk you're taking. And yes, you know that there are ways to take it back away from you. There are things that will do that, but am I sure I'm going to get some of that? Or am I going to end up with 7 corruption at the end of the game that are each worth minus 15 points or something stupid? I love it. It makes the game fun for me, where it really kind of blanded out for me a long time ago. So I'm happy to play this game with this expansion.
And the way that Valhalla is the greatest expansion to a game, there is a single card in Scoundrels of Skullport, which again is one of my favorite expansions of all time too. I love it. There's one card in my entire life, I've removed one component from a board game, set it aside in my house, and will never return it to the board game box as long as I live. And it is Scoundrels of Skullport, and it is an intrigue quest that if you complete, you become immune to negative actions for the entire game. And it is only like 2 cubes to complete it, and it gives you like 1 point. A friend of mine played, he completed that turn 1, and for the entire game was immune to all the take that, any negative effect, any intrigue card, like nothing could touch him in the entire game. And it is so brokenly OP that I removed it, and it sits on a dresser in my house and will never return to the game because it's stupid.
Well, sometimes you got to make a stand. Good for you, sir.
There are definitely...
Put it in a little frame.
I'm going to get a little shadow box for it. The worst card ever made. But other than that, it is a fantastic expansion. I agree with everything you said. I love Scoundrels.
There are games that have stinkers of a card that might even be represented by skunks.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, I'm not going there. All right, we're gonna go over to Patrick now. Patrick, for your final choice here for best expansions, favorite expansions, and this is a game that I have a huge box of stuff for that somebody gifted me, just who was trying to clear space, and I just have not gotten it to the table yet. Maybe my kids aren't quite old enough for the heaviness, weight of this game, and that is for Imperial Assault: Return to Hoth.
So I specifically did this because I think it's an important point when it comes to expansions. Everything in the Imperial Assault stuff is like tiny nuggets of crack cocaine where you feel like you need to grab. It's like Magic the Gathering crack, where you feel like, oh, this came out, I really need to get this, even if you don't get it to the table that often. Hoth is one of the better ones because it gives you more adventures usually than when you just buy another expansion from the Imperial Assault stuff. So I really do like that. I also, Hoth is a special thing for me with Star Wars. I loved Empire Strikes Back. It might be my favorite Empire Strikes Back.
It's mine too.
Everyone's got their opinion. But I brought this up because I think, first of all, it's almost kind of necessary because there are only so many scenarios in the campaign for the base version. And this entire setup is set up like Magic the Gathering, or to get you addicted into getting every little tiny piece, which I'm glad you said somebody gifted it to you. They eventually they went to rehab, they kicked it, and they had to sit in. Everybody, they made him get rid of their stuff. He gave it to you, and now you've got it, and it's collecting dust. But I wanted to kind of specify that because I feel like there are a lot of possibilities out there for other expansions that can kind of get you into that black hole, and I wanted to address it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they make a ton of stuff for Imperial Assault. Big expansions like
awesome.
this, and tiny expansions.
It's all awesome.
How much Imperial Assault do you have, Erock? How much
I
do you have?
0.
Oh,
but I have played and I know all that stuff. And one of the reasons I have 0 is because I have a ton of dissent. So it's kind of a mirror either way there. It's just one of those things. I agree with everything you've said. They're terrible people. They keep putting this stuff out, and it's all great, and you want to get it all, and then you just have so much that you hardly touch each individual piece anymore. Like, I have so much dissent, like each individual. First of all, it's been forever since I played, and second of all, like, I have so many different monsters. How often do I use each monster? You know, because there's so much content out there. But
it's
at the same time,
it's about having them.
It's about having them. Right, exactly.
Well,
every bit that you add is awesome. I agree.
And the thing is like, you're like, well, I have to get Boba Fett. Like,
right.
I need a Boba Fett. Well, then you need the Twin Towers expansion. I think it's Twin Cities expansion. Well, now I've got to get the Twin Cities expansion to be able to use my Boba Fett. Like, so everything's linked together to just screw you the very worst possible way. Does Descent have... I haven't played Descent in a very, very, very long time. I don't own any of it. Does it have a companion app as well? Like...
yes. I never actually played with that, but they came out with that later.
Okay.
I think they did some really cool things. Now, again, I love Descent. I've had a ton of fun playing Descent, but I also played some Imperial Assault, and they made some innovations, like a graduation, an evolution, as it were. I really like what they did with Imperial Assault. It's really fun to play. I don't know, it both gives you more choices and is more thematic by giving you those choices, because Descent's kind of on a rail. Like, you win or lose, you're going to the next thing. Win or
Yeah.
lose, you're going to the next thing. You know what I'm saying? This
Right.
gives you like side quests and like, well, now since Chewie's with us, now we got Chewie side quests going on. Like that is so awesome. You know, oh, it's so great. I got to shut up because I'll keep going on. It's
You
really
know,
It's
awesome.
so highly addictive.
This is the game that I wanted to play with my kids after we finished Adventure Tactics, right? I thought if they could get through Adventure Tactics, then maybe this would be the next step up. They watched a lot of the Star Wars Clone Wars, but for the most part, they're just really not into Star Wars. So I think we're going to try Mice and Mystics first.
I wasn't a big fan of that one. That one gets really muddy with the
It's a little
rules.
clunky.
Well, we're going to try
it's-
it.
You know, I
Because I've
mentioned
got
this
it
one
sitting on
time.
the shelf.
One time before in one of these, we were talking about this, and I mentioned this. When they make these games for kids, they don't give you all the rules.
Yeah.
They want it to
I know
be
that
this
really bugs you, but I just
loosey-goosey
man with it.
experience,
Yeah.
and
This
it
household,
drives
like it
me
seems like it should
insane.
work like this, so it's gonna.
You know, that's we've had this discussion before, right? Like Erock will stop a game to tweet the designer to get a ruling. Not me. I just house rule it on the spot and keep going because I'm not about that.
He's trying to melt my head, sir. Yes.
Erock's putting on his coat. I'm just gonna
Like,
go talk to him.
whoa,
I'm just gonna go
Whoa,
talk to him.
what's everybody doing? We haven't figured this out yet.
I won't even look it up in the rule book sometimes. I'll be like, I think that's in the rule book. I think this is what it is. I don't know. Let's just roll with it.
Oh
It's a
my
kids
God.
game. Who cares?
We have different groups that we play with.
Yes.
Clearly.
Well, that's us with Frosthaven launched with so many errata out of the box that like we're just constantly going up. I guess they're saying do this instead, but it's all like FAQs of people talking amongst themselves, and then occasionally Isaac will show up and go, "This is the right answer." But there's so much of that, and it's just like at a certain point, I'm just like, you know what? We win a scenario. Let's just move on. Let's just move
Right.
on.
Well, you know, right now on Steam, Gloomhaven is on sale, and the computer's always right. You don't have to look anything up.
Yeah.
That's
No, I just want to tell you the computer's not always right, but it is right
no,
most
it
of the
is by
time.
Yeah, you
definition
misunderstand. It's always right. You
No,
can't argue
I'm
with it.
telling you, it's not always
It's correct
right,
by definition.
but it is usually right.
It's
Yes.
pretty
Yeah.
good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
All right. Well, let's. What do we got here? Let's move on to John's third pick, which I guess is technically the 10th one that we're talking about tonight. And this is the Cult of the New. I think this has got to be the newest thing on the list because it is Thunder Road Vendetta, Big Rig, and Final Five.
Yes. So again, this falls under the adds player count to it. Going from 4 to 5 is just a sweet spot on board games. There's so many times where it's just like, oh, we got 5. What can we play? And it just cuts your options down severely because 4 is usually like what people aim for when designing. So any game that I enjoy that can go from 4 to 5, I'm there. I saw the expansion. Cascadia, chomping at the bit to get the Cascadia expansion. I cannot wait for that. So that this fits perfectly with that. But also the base game is super fun and has just the cars. This adds 2 new kinds of vehicles. You can either have a big rig, which I love the theme and story of because it's literally, it drives through mountains. The big rig just starts going and it doesn't stop going. And the other people have to blow it up because it is going to the finish line. It'll see you there. And then there's got the motorcycles, which is just they're not really strong, but they can get far. But if someone bumps into them, they're careening off the road. I had a big rig run over 2 of my motorcycles on the same turn and destroy both of them. And that's what's so great about this game is you can just get absolutely destroyed and still have a blast with it. So it adds not only a 5th player, but new types of vehicles, new stuff to the game. And then there's other expansions that adds like ramps and you can literally catch your car on fire and all that stuff. So for me, this one just took a game that I really enjoy, made it so I can get it to the table more often, added more options that you can play as, and expanded the theme of it to just be even more of a fun concept. So it hits all those marks with me. I will always play with it kind of expansion, and it works. So that's my number 3.
I hear the next expansion is going to be a guy that hangs off the front, and when he strums his guitar, it shoots flame out.
I think they're already this close to a lawsuit. That would probably put it over the edge.
Nice.
It's on a little wire and it just bounces back and forth. But I would buy it. Lawsuit be damned, I'd buy it.
Right, you're not going to get sued, right? What do
Yeah,
you
I don't care.
I want the guy with the metal hockey mask and like a diaper.
Oh, Master Blaster?
No. He was what was his name?
Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Master Blaster was Thunderdome. He's talking
Thunderdome,
about
yeah.
the movie before that one. Yeah.
Just
Awesome.
dude
Good
cruising
choice.
around on a forklift with wearing underwear.
As
I
you
don't think
do when you're a Floridian.
Yeah.
If you watch that movie, that's what it's like driving down I-4.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
just that's our
exactly.
norm.
I-4 is Thunderdome. All right. So, as previously mentioned, my third pick, John stole from me, because right off the bat we started with Tuscany, and that was my third pick. So our two crossovers were Tuscany and Monsters and Minions. So two of my three picks were crossovers. I'm the people. I don't know. So, but I did say I had a short list when I started doing this of 11 games. So I'm just going to real quick list what the other ones I was considering were, since you guys stole my third pick.
I'll vote on them as you say them.
Yeah, you can. All right, real quick. So Alien Frontiers Factions. It adds a fifth player. It adds asymmetric powers, but I really like the outposts. Or the stations, or whatever you call the things.
Yeah.
Next was Champions of Midgard Valhalla, was on my short list. All right. So next is, if you haven't played a game called Expedite, it's a little bit like Ticket to Ride, but you steal stations from each other. Anyway, if you got the Kickstarter version, it came with double the number of destination cards, which to me I think is pretty key to that game, because otherwise you can sort of know where people are going. But with twice as many cards, you don't know what people are doing, because you don't know what the destinations are. Flashpoint Tragic Events was really high on my list. Normally you roll for hotspots. This gets rid of that mechanism and adds the fire breaking out tied to an event just from a deck of cards you turn stuff over. It's a Wonderful World, Corruption and Ascension. It's more of the same, but it also adds the corruption mechanism, where you take a really cool card, but it negates your production of some resource. And then it has the dual scoring things, where you score for pairs of things at the end of the game.
Really good.
How long have you had that expansion?
What's that?
How long have you had that expansion?
I don't know. I got it as soon as it came out, Corruption and Ascension.
I remember playing that game with you. I just don't remember playing the expansion.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we played with that or not. I don't remember.
It's almost seamless. Like,
I do every time I play it since I've gotten that. We played with it. I always play with it. I don't think it's that much
there's
extra,
like no reason not to. This is one of those, like, it's like 15 seconds of more rules, and it adds a whole lot more to the game. It's really cool.
Next is Jamaica the Crew. So I really like...
This was on Neutral's list.
Yeah, I really like the crew. It gives you something to do in the ports. You go and get a crew member. And the best decision about it, though, because this game could be all about the crew, is that the crew actually take up a spot in your hold. And you need those spots for food and cannons and points and, just other stuff. So the balance of, crew versus cargo holds, I think really makes that great.
It was on my short list, too. It was fantastic. And this is, like, perhaps the biggest expanse between a game coming out and an expansion coming out. It was like 10 years in between these two, and Jamaica was a lot of fun. And then this come out and you're like, oh yeah. I mean, it just slotted right into the game like perfectly. It was really, really well done. Very high on my list.
It took 10 years to tune it.
Apparently, yes.
Next is Last Will Getting Sacked. So Last Will is a game where it's like Brewster's Millions, that movie, where you're trying to lose your fortune to inherit a fortune. You have to lose some money to inherit a fortune.
Speaking of long time, how has that not been redone at this point? It's
Last
such a
Will?
classic movie. No,
Brewster's Millions.
Like, how has that not
I was
been
like,
remade?
Last Will has actually been redone, so that was
Yeah.
I don't know that would be a pretty good remake. It's a good movie too.
I guess because Richard Pryor's dead.
Richard Pryor's great.
Well, you wouldn't remake it with the same people anyway, but
We're not saying put him in the movie, Erock.
It would be so boring if you had two dead people in the movie.
Yeah. You couldn't remake
made it
Silver
work
Streaks,
with
they're both
Bird.
but it
dead.
would probably win some art prize.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, in the Getting Sacked expansion, you also have to get fired from your job. And so I like that little extra piece. It's just an extra thing you have to do, and thematically it's sort of cool. And it's fun, like the dumb stuff you do to get fired.
That's a source of income, right? So you got to get rid of that too.
I mean, the dumb stuff you do to lose money in this game, like, well, I'm going to take my horse to the dinner reservation I have, or whatever. It's just, I love that game. Anyway, and last on my list is Paper Tales Beyond the Gates. So I
Never
think...
played.
Yeah, this adds, I think, 2 players to the player
Yeah.
count. Maybe takes it from 5 to 7. And it also adds a lot of variety. In the original Paper Tales, there's just the specific set of buildings you play with. With Beyond the Gates, now there's a lot more buildings, and you play with a different subset of them every time. So there's just some variability in the setup there. I think you would actually like Paper Tales a lot, Erock.
Yeah, it's a drafting game. It's one of those games where it barely functions without the expansion. The expansion adds, like, it should have been in the base game kind of thing. You need that variety, because otherwise it gets stale pretty
You know
quickly.
what?
But
One of the reasons maybe I didn't rate this as highly or higher is I've never played without the expansion. Like, I know it's in the expansion, and I've always played with it, so I know that it's cool and I like it. But yeah, I've never had that separate experience of what the game's like without it. So
That's a good point. I wonder if there are expansions out there that I think are fantastic, but I just never played the base game.
yeah,
food for thought. Okay, so
Indeed.
I bought Neutral the Crew, apparently, because I recommended it so much. Jamaica the Crew expansion? All right. Good for me. What were his favorite picks? King of Tokyo power-up. So that's a really good choice.
yeah, for sure.
Although, usually when I'm bringing King of Tokyo out for the first time, it's sort of as a gateway game, so I don't include power-up every time we play it. So that's why it didn't make my shortlist. Anyway.
It's one of those that people like Erock need to have that power up to be able to play with the new players. Otherwise, they're just going to be bored the whole time.
Right. He listed he listed Jamaica the Crew, obviously, and then Castle Panic: The Wizard's Tower, which, I didn't even think about that. I don't have Castle Panic anymore. I traded it away. It's a really good cooperative tower defense game, basically. Yeah, if you're gonna play Castle Panic, you should play with the Wizard's Tower. That is a good choice. And of course, he says, well, he mentions Cosmic Encounter, but basically anything that adds more aliens to Cosmic Encounter is good stuff, right?
Well, yeah, plus all the other stuff. That's like every time they expanded that, it was gold. Gold, I tell you.
Yeah, I mean,
Coming to gold, Jerry.
There are some hits and misses. Some people have talked about taking specific aliens out, like John takes out that one card from Scoundrels of Skullport, but that's all right. So anyway, I ran down my whole short list. Any of you guys have anything you want to?
That's a social game. Someone's playing a broken alien, you just beat them up. That's how you balance
unless
that.
you can't, because it says you can't, right?
Well, then you beat the person up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always
all
an
right.
option.
Physical violence is always an option. You heard it here first, people.
There's no card you can play that's going to prevent this backhand. All right, so let's play nice. Let's put good aliens.
This is why John wins a lot.
And if any of you want to play a game with John at Dice Tower,
Bring a helmet.
how about what do you think is like the worst expansion that you played? Like, it shouldn't be in here.
Oh, there's a fun game called Dune Imperium.
Well,
Okay.
Now,
No,
don't down there.
Role Player Fiends and Familiars is one of my least favorite expansions,
Yeah.
which is funny because Monsters and Minions is one of my favorites. But
Yeah, I like it. It's just fine.
I forget the name of the Betrayal House on the Hill expansion.
The one that's
Widow's
broken.
Walk.
Widow's Walk.
Widow's
yeah.
Walk.
Is that the one that's broken?
No, that just adds more scenarios mostly, I think, right?
Yeah, but they also do this weird thing where a chunk of the scenarios, once you play with the Widow's Walk expansion, you're just trying to get more stuff, like, from anyone else. So it just kind of...
Oh, I'll tell you what the worst. It's Fresco.
No, I know what the worst is, but go ahead.
Fresco has like literally 17 modules. My wife got the big box. It's literally, it's just giant. It's like
It
three
is
normal
a
board
giant
games.
box, yes.
We never play with any of the modules because you got to stop and go, well, what's this module do? Well, has everyone played before? And there's just so much stuff in the box that never gets touched because even if it's a great idea, incorporating it while you're teaching the game to somebody is just a nightmare. So too much extra stuff, too much like you got to actually pick what you want out of it, and it just falls flat.
So, John, you're going to agree with me here because this takes one of the best games ever made, makes probably it doubles its length, adds an extra phase, and it's just awful. And that is For Sale Advisors.
Yeah. Oh, it's
which
terrible.
is in For Sale Autorama or whatever that version is.
Autorama, just don't buy Autorama. It's terrible.
But you can
Buy the
play.
base game.
You can buy Autorama and just play for sale with it. Although they didn't put that in the rule book, even as a variant for some reason. But you asked what were the worst expansion ever, so I pulled up Board Game Geek to see if I had rated something.
I think that might be the worst.
Yeah.
I hated every minute of that expansion.
I think my worst is what John was talking about. I hate the modules. You want to give me an expansion to complete my game? Thank you. You want to give me 10 modules that do different things? And my even favoriter, you can't play them together. Come on.
Yeah.
If you play these two, the balance is thrown on. Get out of here. Get out of here with this.
That drives me crazy. Thank you, Everdell.
You guys are gonna have to tell me here because I have something rated low here and I don't remember why. I do like Shadows over Camelot, but I have Merlin's Company rated low.
I haven't played enough to. It's been so long.
I've never played that expansion.
I don't remember why I didn't like it.
Do you still
maybe?
have...
No, remember I gave it away. Or I sold it in the charity auction.
Yeah, the charity.
You painted Merlin for me because I had
Yeah.
everything else painted. It was something, there was some specific, like it was some randomness cards about how Merlin traveled around or something that was broken and stupid. I think that's what it was. It was the travel cards. Yeah, events that occurred as you moved from quest to quest that would screw with you. I hated that. I think that's why. I rated it lowly. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. Sounds plausible. Let's go with that. Neutral says we should change the channel to Just Got Punched.
Then we don't have to be in the same room.
The thumbnail.
I'm just going to have that as the thumbnail in the corner instead of the Just Got Played logo. It's just John.
Just threatening 4 across the eyes.
I can't really think of bad expansions. I have a whole list of you didn't need to make an expansions, but
yeah.
Well, we come prepared, right? We think about what are the good ones or whatever. So, if we think about what are the bad ones,
we could probably do a whole thing.
We could probably come up with some good ones. I just happen to keep a lot of data on BGG, so I was able to go look that up really quick. Board Game Geek, not a sponsor, but right, Patrick?
But a good friend of the show.
Yeah, that's true.
Technically, I'm their sponsor.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I also annually donate to Board Game Geek. So
right?
There you go. Right.
I didn't know they had a drinking problem.
You didn't?
They don't. They got a good sponsor.
Right. They got a good sponsor now.
They used to have one.
All right. Cool. Anything else about expansions? Ladies, gentlemen? I also have Alien Frontiers Outer Belt rated lower than the regular game. It's not bad, but I don't like it. Just FYI.
Yeah.
I would
never played.
Yeah, we know that now.
I have Zaya.
I would always play with. But those games are nothing like each other.
Wait, what'd you say?
Alien Frontiers. Outer
Oh, I
Belt.
thought you said
Not Star Wars Outer Rim.
Do you know what's the
Yes,
closest game to
there you
Alien
go.
Frontiers? It's Sagrada.
Yeah.
They're both dice placement. So.
They're both dice plays. You got dice, Erock.
They
You can't
play
argue
very
this.
differently, but the puzzle's the same.
The same.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Well, we've been live for, almost an hour and 15 minutes here. So I guess it is time to call it then. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm Steven. That's Patrick. That's Erock. That's John. We're from Just Got Played. If you like this kind of stuff that we do, subscribe to our channel so that you will get notified when we have live streams like this coming out. You can come in. You can join in the chat. Or if you come over to our Discord and join the Discord, sometimes we invite people in the Discord to come chat with us live like this. In fact, we're going to do that on Wednesday evening. We're going to have a live chat with some of our channel members. So anyway, hit the subscribe button. Give us a like if you enjoyed this. But
Or else.
Yeah, or else. But regardless, thanks for joining us. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice time.
Have a wonderful time. I can't
Bye,
close
have a
the
beautiful
stream
time.
until Erock says that. All right.